36 of the Dorton and Duckett Debate podcast. I am Lucas Dorton, and today I am still joined by Nicholas Duckett. Nick, how are we doing today?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad.
That's good. Nick is a warrior, folks. He has to wake up really early for work, so he's staying up a little bit later with us tonight to do this podcast.
Oh yeah, I've been awfully tired. I don't know why, but you know what? We're gonna get it.
As Randy Moss would say, you're getting that straight cash, homie, right?
Yes, yes, yes. He would, and yes, I am.
That's awesome. So we're going to get into it. Obviously, there's been a little bit of stuff going on. It's kind of been the combination of a week and a half or so. That's kind of how we've been doing the podcast recently, not necessarily because that's just when we're able to do it. That's part of the reason, but also that there generally just isn't enough stuff going on in the 1 week that we would usually do in between the shows. But yeah, so we have that going on. Also, folks, there isn't going to be a whole lot of NHL free agency talk, so just letting you know that now, because there's been a ton of stuff happen,
Yeah.
a ton of signings, a ton of trades going on. So I'm going to be dedicating an entire episode to NHL free agency and trades up to this point so far, and I will be joined by a secret guest coming up. So I cannot tell you who that is. It is not Nick Duckett, though. I will tell you that. It will be somebody else.
Yeah, they might watch that. They're like, "Oh, it's not Nick. All right, we'll tune
I mean, I would, if I'm being honest.
in."
But yeah, so not a whole lot of NHL talk tonight. So I don't want you to think we're jipping NHL. I know there's a lot of stuff that's going on, but with the amount of stuff going on, I'm just going to dedicate an entire episode to it, make it a whole lot easier. So look out for that, folks. So we're going to start in the National Basketball Association. Billy Donovan, former coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, will now be coaching the Chicago Bulls. I'm going to start off with this. Personally, obviously, I'm a Florida Gators fan. You know, that is my college. It's the team I cheer for in all the sports. Um, Billy Donovan is one of my favorite coaches of all time, you know, college or pros. Now, a huge reason because of that is he coached for the Florida Gators for a number of years and won back-to-back titles. I like this a lot. I think a lot of people said that he was always benefited by having great stars on his team in OKC, which is fair. You know, Westbrook, Durant. You know, I'm not sure if he had Harden at all in that time frame. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't believe he did. But Westbrook, Durant, and then obviously most recently Chris Paul. Now, I think it just goes to show this season how good of a coach Billy Donovan is. Now, yes, Chris Paul, a veteran player, he's been around a long time. He has won. You know, obviously hasn't won a ring, but he has had playoff success, and a ginormous reason why OKC was good. But I think it just goes to show how much of a coach Billy Donovan was this year, because he had a really young team, and you can have a star out there like Chris Paul, but you still got to find ways so that they can work together, mesh together, make things well. And they made the playoffs, despite what a lot of people thought they weren't going to be able to do. They were able to do that.
As like
So
a 5 seed or
yeah,
six? Six? I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, it wasn't like they were a 7 or 8 either.
No, they were a legit playoff team, and they battled. You know, they lost to Houston, but it was a great series. It's not like Houston just blew them away in 4 games. You know, it was a good series.
7 gamer.
Yep. And so went the distance against a good Houston team. So that's you gotta give them a lot of praise for that. So now going coaching to the Bulls, a team that doesn't have too much of an identity. They're a younger team. They haven't really won much as of recent. Do you like this move for the Bulls, bringing in Billy Donovan as their head coach?
Um, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, that team's got a long ways to go. I mean, I don't think.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be expecting anything from them anytime soon, regardless of who their coach is. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest job in the world either, but if Donovan wants it, then go ahead. But I mean, Donovan's had some success, and the last thing you need is just another failed coach in Chicago. So, I mean,
Right.
be willing to give him a shot, see what happens.
Yeah. And the reason why I like this so much just is the fact that Billy Donovan coached at the collegiate level, so you're coaching with a lot of young guys trying to find their way and hopefully getting them to the next stage, which is the NBA. And he has had a lot of success. Like I mentioned, back-to-back titles. He coached some great Florida Gators team with Al Horford, Joakim Noah, just to name a few. Bradley Beal was there at some point. He has had phenomenal players, and obviously, I'm not going to go down the list of players that have made the NBA under Billy Donovan because it's a big list. But he has coached guys to win. It was a winning program when he was there, and he has had success with younger guys. So I think I like this a lot. A team going to the Chicago Bulls, that's a younger roster. Like I said, they don't really have an identity of who they are as a
Yeah,
team. I think their identity is that they're not very good, obviously.
that's what I was thinking.
But I think he can go there. And I'm not expecting the Chicago Bulls to, be playoff contenders next season because it's hard to turn a team around that quick with virtually the same roster. So we'll have to see what he does. I think in a couple years, kind of build an identity, build some chemistry there. Maybe they're a playoff team. Now, not this year. Well, I guess this year technically is over, so next year, and then the year after that, probably not. But maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. So Doc Rivers was fired as the Clippers
Yeah.
head coach, and is now did not have to wait too long to find a new head coaching job. As now he is coaching the Philadelphia 76ers. Um, First off, we'll start with him getting fired from the Clippers. Were you at all surprised that the Clippers did end up firing him?
I was. No, granted, I mean, I love Doc Rivers. I mean, he seems like a really good dude, but I
Yeah.
mean, I've never been huge on him as a coach. I thought last year he did a brilliant job bringing that team to a 7 or 8 seed, and I think forcing 6 games against the Warriors. But
Hmm.
honestly, besides that, I haven't thought he's a very good coach for quite a while. I actually probably would have got rid of him 2 or 3 years ago. But that being said, I did not expect them to do it, especially only 1 year removed from last year. I thought he was very impressive, so I was surprised. But I'm not at all surprised that he got a job so fast. I mean, it's Doc Rivers. He's one of the biggest named coaches in the league.
Right.
He's won a title with the Celtics,
Yep.
and I'm not surprised that he got that job.
Yep.
Um, I mean, he's worked with Garnett, Pierce, Allen, Paul, Griffin, Leonard, all sorts of guys. So I mean, you got Embiid over there. I mean, I'm not trying to put Embiid with all those guys, but he's a very good player. So Doc knows how to work with them and to try to build around them. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, like I said, I wasn't huge on Doc, but it's a lot better than just going out and getting somebody new, probably. So
Right. Um, yeah, Doc Rivers, I'm not entirely surprised that the Clippers fired him. I am a little bit just for the fact that, with the team that they had and he got fired. But I think that is kind of the reason why he got fired was because, well, he had this team and didn't even get to the Western Conference Finals. Thank you to
yeah,
my
right.
Denver Nuggets. Um, for me, though, it's one of those things where, you have everything in front of you. They had a finals roster. Now, would they have beat the Lakers? I don't know. It would have been a good series. Honestly, it could have gone either way. But they are a finals team as how it was built. And that was their goal to get to the finals when they didn't. They didn't get to the Western Conference Finals. Now, I had read something that was interesting. Now, this was kind of after he got fired, so a little over a week now. Supposedly, Steve Ballmer, who is the owner of the Clippers, was absolutely irate, was furious at the Clippers and everything that was going on. Apparently, he was he was ready to do some really drastic things. Firing Doc Rivers was obviously going to be one of them, but he said he was kind of just wanting to blow things up and do that and just kind of get rid of guys because he was that pissed that they ended up losing in the Western Conference semifinals. Now, apparently, some
Interesting.
staff kind of talked him off the ledge a little bit and said, "Well, sleep on it and you'll be better tomorrow." And he said for the most part he did, but then Doc Rivers was still something that he wanted to do, which was firing him, and he obviously ended up firing him.
Interesting.
Um, but if I'm Steve Ballmer, I'm upset. I'm really upset. You dish out all this money, you give away like 7 first-round draft picks to get Paul George, and then, obviously bringing in Kawhi Leonard was not really cheap at all by any means, for sure. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have money. He certainly does if you're owning the LA Clippers, but not a cheap thing to do, for sure. And then obviously bringing in some other role players. But so I thought that was interesting, that they ended up firing him. I guess that quickly. I suppose I thought it maybe would be something that would happen a little bit later in the offseason, but it was pretty quick after.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, yeah, now him coaching the 76ers, Nick, I agree with you a lot. He's had a lot of experience in coaching star players, really, really good players that have had good careers so far. And Joel Embiid is that guy. Now, obviously, like we're saying, not on the Kevin Garnett level, not on those bigger named guys, but he is a star in his own right. Ben Simmons there, Tobias Harris, they're a star team, and quite frankly, they've underperformed. I think they
I was
should
just to say,
be in the finals at some point, and they haven't. They haven't been there.
The Clippers were obviously the most, what am I looking for? Disappointing team in the West.
Yeah.
Probably the whole NBA. I mean, they were preseason favorites to win the title, I believe.
Yep.
The Sixers were probably the most disappointing in the East. Granted, I give them a little bit of a pass. I mean, Ben Simmons got injured right before the playoffs. It's kind of hard to go with that, but they didn't look all that dominant even before that, and they did get swept. They couldn't even get a game without Simmons, so
yeah,
we'll see.
It's interesting. We'll have to see how Doc Rivers does. Going back to the Eastern Conference now, obviously all those years you spent with the Boston Celtics, now being with the Clippers for some time, going back there. I wonder too if it's one of those things why he was fired. I mean, obviously, besides the point of, them blowing up in the playoffs this year, but also the fact that maybe Steve Ballmer wanted his own guy. Doc Rivers was the head coach when Steve Ballmer took over the team, and he kind of just rolled with him. So maybe he just kind of wanted his own dude and have his own personnel in there.
Yeah,
if that's the case, then I could see that. Now, but anyways, so we will segue from that into now who the Clippers head coach is now, and that is Ty Lue. So Ty Lue was an assistant coach with the Clippers this year. Obviously, spent a ton of time as the Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. Was the head coach when they won the finals. Now, people say, oh, it's LeBron's team. The coach doesn't really have to do much. Well, you do to some extent. Obviously, LeBron helps out a ton, but you still got to know when to put guys in the minutes, know who works well together, have lineups and stuff set. So I like it. I've heard Ty Lue gets along great with those superstar type players. Obviously was on the Lakers, played with Kobe for a little bit too. Now, so he kind of knows what it takes to win. So do you like this? Do you like the Clippers bringing in Ty Lue?
More so no than yes. Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say whether he's a good, coach or not. It's you have so little room for error when you're coaching the Cavs like he was with LeBron.
Yeah.
And he did win a title with them. But I don't know. I mean, lasted 2 years as the Cavs coach, which maybe he should have lasted longer. I mean, who knows? But I just never thought he was that great of a coach. It seemed like he was just a guy that everybody liked. He was a player's coach. People got along with him, but is he really going to get you more wins? I don't know. And I don't know. I guess I probably would have gone elsewhere, but we'll see. I mean, he's obviously familiar with the team. That's always a positive.
Right.
And like you said, I mean, it seems like he is a player's coach, which maybe with 2 superstars in the team, that's what you want. But at the same time, I mean, not that you can just go find a pop anywhere, but maybe you want a guy who's really going to be able to make these superstars be accountable and play as a team also, and get you that over that hump and get you where you need to be. So I don't know. We'll see. I probably would have gone elsewhere, but he can prove me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's won a finals, so that certainly helps out a lot, and has been around good teams. So That helps out a ton. Like you mentioned, definitely known as a player's coach. The superstars, the big time players love him. They love playing for him because of that reason. But I wonder how he is elsewhere, like how he is as like a disciplinarian and how he is as keeping guys accountable. Now I remembered hearing something when he was coaching the Cavs, a similar thing kind of came up, like, oh well, is he actually coaching when LeBron is there? And I heard a lot of things that said apparently he can put his foot down and be like, I'm the coach, so listen. Now I don't know if that's true or not. Obviously, we're never going to know if it is because we're not in the huddles, we're not in the locker rooms when that stuff's going on. But who knows? Who knows? We'll have to see what comes of that. But anyways, yeah. So Ty Lue, head coach as the LA Clippers.
Clippers.
So we're gonna go into some football now. We will start with Houston Texans, baby. One of my favorite moves in the last, I don't know how many off seasons. That is not Miami Dolphins related. Bill O'Brien is fired as the Houston Texans coach and general manager.
How long have you been waiting for that one?
Oh, man, I have been waiting days, years for that. I've been waiting years for that. I am not a Houston Texans fan, but I would very much like to throw a party for all Houston Texans fans because now they have that guy off of the team. So first off, Nick, were you surprised? I mean, were you at all surprised? I can't imagine you were.
No, I mean, then again, the guy should have been gone 3 years ago. So I mean, do you really expect him ever to get rid of him at this point? But no, I mean, he should have been gone a long time ago, and they were 0-4. So, by the way, I got the Rays game on in the background. J-Man Choi just absolutely murdered a baseball. It's a tie game. Just so you know.
You like to see that, folks.
Anyways, Bill O'Brien just not good. Just a terrible, abysmal coach. And GM or president, whatever his actual title was. He traded DeAndre Hopkins for
nothing.
A McDonald's Happy Meal. I mean, come on.
The Travis Scott meal.
And David Johnson.
David Johnson.
It was terrible. And they've continually underperformed. I mean, he wasn't fired because they were making playoffs. But when you have Watson, Watt, a lot of the guys they've had on defense over the years, DeAndre Hopkins, they had Arian. I think he had Arian Foster for a while too. I mean, there's so much talent. You should be making the playoffs, especially in a division that had the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, besides 1 year over the past 10, have been terrible. Yeah. The Titans, up until recently, were always 6-10, 7-9, and the Colts the Colts were pretty decent with luck, but they should have been making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, but just because you make the playoffs does not mean you're doing a good job. And finally, it took an 0-4, just abysmal start for them to get rid of him. So honestly, maybe it's a good thing the Texans start off 0-4 because they finally got rid of Bill O'Brien. I mean, no, he's a terrible coach. I don't know how anybody can think differently. So I mean, I don't think he'll have a head coach job anytime soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% in everything that you said. Obviously, I'm not going to go too much into the rant of how I feel about Bill O'Brien because if you've listened to any of the podcasts that we have talked about Bill O'Brien, you will know I'm not a fan of the guy.
Who's better, him or Adam Gase? Or who's worse, I should ask. Who's
worse? That ain't easy. I would have to strongly think about that. But anyways, and you brought up a good point, too, about the whole playoffs thing. It's one of those things where, if you're a coach and you're coaching a team the first few years and, you make the playoffs, okay, good. But, there comes a point where is your goal to just make the playoffs and then get bounced in the first round? Or is your goal to make the playoffs and then gradually get better? I'm not saying you have to make the playoffs 1 year, lose in the first round, and then you have to win the Super Bowl the next year. I just want to see, and this is why I don't like Bill O'Brien, is because we never saw the gradual, the gradual climb. Now, I'm not saying that the teams that he had to go up against were bad. Obviously, they made the playoffs. I will say the Oakland Raiders team, when like Connor Cook was starting after Derek Carr like broke his leg, was not a good team, and they won obviously, and I think they've won another playoff game in the past too against not a very good team. But
Well, they beat the Bills last year after the Bills blew it epically.
right, okay, sorry. So they beat the Bills too. But that was it. Their peak was the playoffs and maybe making it to the second round. Maybe making it to the second round. And they just never did anything. They're in a division that they should dominate, and for the most part, phenomenal regular season team. But the playoffs come around and the wheels fall off the wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I don't like about Bill O'Brien. That plus boneheaded GM decisions. The only GM that is a head coach that is good resides in New England, and his name is Bill Belichick. Okay,
Billy.
he is the
Bill
only one that
Belichick.
I trust making those types of decisions because it has worked out. Bill O'Brien, it has not worked out, and you trade, like I mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins for a Travis Scott meal, plus David Johnson is the toy that they throw in to give you to your little kid.
The toy they throw in. That's what David Johnson's become.
So that is
Oh,
that is
God.
that. But anyways, I'm happy. I'm happy he's gone. Romeo Crennel is kind of the interim head coach now. He's been around the league for a long, long
Oh, yeah.
time. I believe he's like 71, 72 or something like that. He's really old. Um, so, and who know? And his first game, they won. So maybe they stick with him. I don't think they will. Typically, interim head coaches don't make it past the season that they're being the interim head coach for. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Um, Now another firing, the Atlanta Falcons firing their head coach Dan Quinn and their GM as well too. I think for me, it's one of those things where, and I'd always liked Dan Quinn. I think he was a good coach. Obviously, made it to the Super Bowl, should have won. Incompetent play calling and poor play kind of prevented that from happening from Kyle Shanahan. But I think Dan Quinn is a good coach. He's had success. He has been on the bad end of some injuries, though, these last few years. He's had a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people on his defense get shredded with injuries, so that don't help things. Um, but then going into this season, they should have potential, and then they blow multiple double-digit leads in every game. So that is kind of unfortunate. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have fired him because I certainly think they should have. I think he's a solid head coach. He's just kind of been dealt a bad hand with injuries and stuff that have happened to his team. Obviously, you're the head coach. You can't blow as many leads as they have this season and in the past as well too. So I agree that they did it. I think it's the good move. I think it's the right move. I'm not disagreeing that they made that move. Um, but I think another team will pick him up. Maybe he's a coordinator, something like that. But how do you feel about this?
Um, I think it was time. Like I said, just because you made a Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl as a coach, like I said this about McCarthy, the dude won a Super Bowl, so it pretty much locked his job up for the next 5, 6, 7 years and ended up being like a decade. Just because you won one doesn't mean anything. The goal is win it every year, right?
Right.
So if you're consistently underperforming year after year, just because you won one doesn't mean anything. McCarthy should have been gone a long time ago. Now Dan Quinn, I'm not going to say he should have been gone a long time ago because then again, the Super Bowl was only 3 or 4 years ago, and I think he did a great job that year, and I thought he was a great coach. That being said, I mean, it's been pretty abysmal there the last 2 or 3 years. It's just
Yeah.
time, and sometimes it's not even necessarily, and I'm not saying it isn't his fault, but sometimes not even necessarily the coach's fault. It's just the way things are going. Sometimes you just need to change things up. If sometimes that means you got to get rid of the coach, it's the way things go. But it was time. I mean, say what you want. Has he done a good job or not? Who knows? But it's been pretty hard defensively to do anything with the injuries they've had. I mean, Keanu Neal, um, I can't remember if Beasley got hurt, but I mean, just Robert Alford, like everybody on that darn team, it seems to
Yeah.
have a season-ending injury
Desmond
within the last
Trufant
2 or
got
3
hurt a little
years.
bit. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. But I mean, the offense has been pretty sporadic at times too.
It
Like ever
has.
since they lost, I mean, say what you want about Shanahan, yeah, his play calling was pretty bad in the Super Bowl towards the end there, and that doesn't fall only on him. I mean, the head coach is still responsible.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
since they lost Shanahan, the offense is clearly like Shanahan screwed up in that game, but he was still a tremendous offensive
He
coordinator,
was.
and they've
Yep.
clearly missed him. And I mean, but the offense, for the most part, hasn't been the issue. It's been the defense, and like we said, in part because of injuries. But Dan Quinn's supposed to be this defensive guy, and his defense has been like last in the league the
Yeah.
last 2 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was time. I do think this guy's a good coach. If he goes to another place, I think he could succeed. I wouldn't mind seeing Dan Quinn as a as my head coach somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was time. And, especially it's not like it's going to ruffle any feathers right now. I mean, they're pretty much out of it. You might as well see. I mean, I say do it now rather than wait. That way, your interim guy, you can see if it works. Normally, they don't go with the interim. I probably wouldn't either. But if it works out, then hey, then you know that you don't have to go looking elsewhere. Then, right? You have 11 weeks to see how this goes. So it was time. But no, I don't think he's a bad coach. He's just had a couple bad years here.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember
Oh, and
last.
and another thing, that's probably a pretty good job in Atlanta.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
um, granted, I think Matt Ryan's time's coming to a close. At least I think it should. But you got Julio, Calvin Ridley there. You got pieces on the defense if they stay healthy,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have a really good draft pick this year. So I mean, I plus Drew Brees is leaving the Saints and Tom Brady's 40 some. This division's going to be wide open in 2 or 3 years. So I think it's a
Mhm.
good job to get for whoever does get the job.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it definitely is a job that has potential for sure, with young stars on the team, really good veterans on the team. We'll have to see what happens there. Uh, yeah, and I remember last season too, when the Falcons were struggling, there was talks that maybe he gets fired last season. But I remember though the big name players kind of stepped up and were like, well, it's not really his fault. It's our fault. It's on us. He's putting everything out there. We're just not executing. And it sounds like it's like Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, like the big name guys kind of stepped up for him and was like, hey, he's doing everything he can do. We're not executing over here.
By the way, if I were Atlanta, this is kind of off topic, but if I were Atlanta, I would I'd sell completely. I'd completely turn everything upside down. I would trade Julio Jones. If the guy really doesn't want to be traded, then maybe not. Just out of respect for the dude, he's had a hell of a career.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think they should look to trade Julio. I don't think that team's going to be a Super Bowl contender in the next 3 or 4 years. So you might as well do something with him. Matt Ryan has been he hasn't been too great since his MVP season, and he's like 35 years old. So I mean, you can probably start to move on from him. But I would totally. I mean, obviously you keep Ridley and those young guys, but I'd look to sell Julio, add another pick to your already possibly number one overall pick this year with as bad as they look. And I just totally, totally turn this team upside down and start over. But that's just me.
No, I agree. I think they're at a point now where they're obviously not going to be winning anytime soon. I mean, unless they have a miraculous turnaround, which I don't think is going to happen. But I agree. I think it's kind of one of those things where, it sucks. It sucks. Matt Ryan's been there for forever. Julio Jones has been there for forever. But there kind of comes a time where, how long do you want to wait until these guys leave or retire to win? Now, I think they have a good base in Calvin Ridley. I think they 100% keep him,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of build around him. But I think Matt Ryan isn't getting any younger. You know, Julio Jones, arguably the best receiver in the game right now, he isn't getting any younger. Now, granted, he is still producing at the number one receiver in the NFL type talent.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but there kind of comes a time where if you're not winning now, you kind of gotta get rid of those guys, and it sucks because they've been staples of that Atlanta franchise for years now. But you got to do what's best for the franchise. And I think right now, what's best for the franchise is if they just kind of blow it up, start from scratch, and be like, all right, let's start from square one again. What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see what Atlanta decides to do. If they move any guys before the trade deadline or not, or if they wait till the offseason to do stuff. But we'll see what happens there. Certainly keep a close eye on that situation in Atlanta. We'll move over to some Major League Baseball now. A couple more firings. There's been a ton of firings happening in all of sports, and baseball is also part of that brigade. We'll start with the Boston Red Sox. Ron Renicky was fired as the head coach for the Red Sox. Um, First off, I'm not surprised. I'm not. The Red
No.
Sox were abysmal this year. They didn't have a great team to start with. They had a lot of Chris Sale didn't really play at all. He was injured the whole year, and they had some injuries going on. Obviously, traded Mookie Betts. That doesn't help at all. I don't think anyone was too surprised with this. I don't even think that even if the Red Sox were successful, I don't think Renicky was going to be there past this season anyways. It kind of sounded like the only reason they brought him in was because they kind of convinced him to say, hey, just be kind of our coach right now and then do whatever. So I'm not entirely surprised by that. Um, but I can't imagine you weren't too surprised by this either.
No, I mean, yeah, it sounded like he was just kind of a temp anyways, and even if he wasn't, I mean, this team's roster wasn't great, but it should have been better than this. I mean, I had this team going 500. There's no out at all, especially
Yeah.
with Chris Sale gone. But they have so many hitters on that team. You should have been able to win some games. Now, JD Martinez had a pretty bad year. Devers had a pretty bad year. It's tough to put that on coaching. It's just maybe two guys just had bad years. I mean, we've seen it a lot this year with Bellinger really struggling, Yelich. So it's not necessarily on Renicky. But I mean, when you put up a record as bad as they had this year and you're the Boston Red Sox, you're not going to keep a job very long. So
Mhm.
I'm not at all surprised. And now they can now they have a whole offseason to go find somebody rather than just like a month. So, yeah, and I think it was pretty obvious.
Yeah. The Red Sox are certainly going to need to. They're really going to need to figure things out, turn things around a little bit. Now they don't have a great roster. Seems like the
Especially
Red
with,
Sox are one of those teams where they're really bad for a few years, and then all of a sudden every free agent goes there, and then they're making a World Series run.
oh, they're either the best team or the worst team. I
Yeah,
mean, literally,
yeah,
over the last like 6 years, they're either the best team of the AL or the worst.
yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Um,
the Rays are a game away from the World Series. The Yankees are in the playoffs every year, leading the league in home runs darn near every year. So you get those two teams to compete with. I mean, you're going to need to. I mean, fans aren't going to be. I mean, it's Boston. Yeah, you've had a lot of success, but you don't want to be seen losing to the Yankees and Rays. And I mean, so they're really going to. I mean, the pressure's on for any manager, but
yeah,
Boston don't give up. You know,
no,
Boston wants to beat you.
they
So, I
have.
mean, they're going to make moves. They're going to spend money.
Yep.
Whoever that manager is, pressure's on right away, whoever they go do and get.
Boston is a high leverage place to coach. Them Yankees, those big market teams. It's not easy to be a head coach there. So
No,
to see how that goes. Another firing, this one pretty surprising, I'd say, and I think you'd probably agree with me. The
I don't understand it.
Chicago White Sox firing their head coach, Rick Renteria. Um, I didn't see this coming at all, especially a team that,
I don't get it.
well, they made the playoffs. um, I think that's better than I thought they were going to do. I think me personally, I think they did a phenomenal offseason. But I even remember saying when we did our baseball preseason prediction episode that I still thought they were kind of probably a year out yet for making the playoffs. They made the playoffs this year. Now, yes, shortened season, only 60 games, whatever. They made the playoffs. It doesn't matter. They made it. So that's good for them. Um, Obviously, you're the AL Central guy, so you're going to know a little bit more probably about this White Sox team than I will. But what would you think is the reason why they fired him? Because I was surprised that they did.
I honestly have no idea. I mean, yeah, they lost in the playoffs, but they lost to a good Oakland team
Mm-hmm.
who, finished better than them in the regular season. Probably should have. I predicted them to win the American League this year. I mean, it's a good team. They didn't get swept like the Twins, they're a 29-31 team. They won the first game. Um, I don't understand. Like I said, the White Sox and Reds were clearly the most improved teams through the offseason this last year, but I thought both of them were a year out. Now the Reds wouldn't have made the playoffs if it weren't for the 8 teams, but they did. The White Sox had a good chance, I think, of making the playoffs even without the expansion because they were in the even if it were a 160 game season because they surprised me. Like I said, I thought they'd be decent, but I thought they were a year out. But it looked like this year already, like they're here to compete. That offense is one of the best in the league. And then with Keuchel and Giolito at the top of the rotation, they could beat anybody on any given day and anybody in a series. No, yeah, it didn't work out, but they only lost. I mean, you lost a 3 game series in 3 games. I mean, or you lost the best of 3 series in 3 games to the Oakland A's. I mean, what do you expect? Like, that's what happens. And like I said, in my opinion, they performed better than they should have this year. I thought they were a year out. So I was baffled. I it sounds like there might have been other things, maybe internal issues, not
Sure.
necessarily performance driven. That's about the only thing I can think of. Because if it's
Yeah.
based on performance, then somebody's definitely over evaluating their team and is overreacting. Because
Based off of performance on someone's high.
yeah, because I mean, if you're the Twins who win your division 2 years in a row, win 100 plus games last year, then get swept in 2 consecutive playoff series, one of them being a 29-31 team, then it's okay to overreact. At that point, I
Yeah.
don't think it's overreacting. But you're the White Sox. You just made it there, and honestly, I don't. Like I said, I didn't think they'd be this good yet. I thought they'd be a year out. You didn't get swept. You played a good team in the playoffs. You competed in all 3 games. You almost won the division if it weren't just for a slump right at the end of the year. I I don't get it. Like I said, it's got to be something that's not necessarily performance based. Otherwise, somebody's completely wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It probably would have to be something internal. Maybe he didn't get along with big name players on the team. Maybe he had issues elsewhere. I don't know. We'll have to see what comes of this. I can't imagine that he would be jobless for too long here. It sounds like he's a pretty good head coach.
How long
So
is he
we'll
there
see what
for?
happens. A few years. A few
Yeah.
years.
I mean, and whoever Chicago does get, I mean, talk about a job to have.
Oh, I think the Chicago White Sox head coaching job is going to be the hot commodity this
I mean,
offseason.
Giolito's looking like he's going to be one of the best pitchers in the game.
Yep.
That offense is probably the best young offense in baseball, along with the Braves and the Padres.
Yep.
I mean, it's one of the best offense in baseball. Got, I mean, like I said, they're very young. Um, uh, the Twins and Indians are very good, but it's a winnable division. I mean, you don't got to go through the Dodgers. I mean, it's a good market. Obviously, it's Chicago, so
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a great job to have. Definitely the one I would want.
Yeah, we'll have to see what comes of this and who Chicago ends up bringing in as their head coach. The Angels fired their general manager, Billy Epler. I'm not really at all surprised by this. They are a team that has kind of underperformed, to put it nicely, the past few years that he has been here. Now it's not. He had one more year on his deal. Owner Artie Moreno was kind of just like, "Well, sorry about it. We're getting rid of you now."
Right.
Um, Apparently, the um, kind of what I saw was that there was a lot of pressure that kind of escalated when the when Artie Moreno, who was the owner, fired Brad Osmus, who was the guy that Epler kind of brought in as his guy, who he wanted to bring in after Mike Scioscia was there for whatever, and he was only there for one season, fired him. And then obviously they spent a lot of money this offseason on Anthony Rendon, $245 million. Made other smaller moves, nothing too exciting that's gonna, hit the radar or anything. But they struggled, and I think a culmination of that is that They not only did not make the playoffs when the playoffs were expanded to 16 teams, 8 and 8 in each conference, but that they haven't done anything. In the 5 years that he was there, they did nothing. They pretty much wasted 5 years of Mike Trout's career. Now, apparently, I did read that he was kind of the forefront to bring Ohtani there. A great evaluator of talent is what I heard, is what some people have said about him. But they underperformed, and they have been pretty much his entire tenure there. So, Nick, I'm assuming you can't be too surprised by this one either.
No,
If so, what do you think?
no, and it's the smart move. The Angels have been abysmal lately, and honestly, every single year, the last 3, 4, 5 years, I picked this team to miss the playoffs because they're not good, and people for whatever reason kept picking them to make the playoffs year after year, and I said the Angels are not good; they won't be there. I'm not right about everything, but I was right about the Angels. Like, I don't know if it's just because they got Trout that people keep thinking they're going to be good or what. It's like it takes more than one guy to win, especially
Especially in
in
baseball.
baseball.
Yeah.
And the problem is they haven't had any pitching, and also their 6 through 9 is terrible. You
Yeah.
can have the best 1 through 4 in baseball, for gosh sakes, but if you cannot hit 6 through 9, 7 through 9, you will not be winning many games because it's just easy outs. And that's what they've had. They got Rendon. They have Ohtani DHing, who's been a really solid hitter since he got here. Well, he kind of struggled this year, but like I said, a lot of people did this year. And you got Trout, and then Simmons has been good, and Fletcher, but they have no 7 through 9. Pujols keeps playing. I know it's Albert Pujols. But the guy's been awful for like 3 years. Just awful. I mean, he can't run. He can't hit for average. All he does is hit home runs, and it looks cool every time he does it because it's 600 and something. Like, honestly, the dude shouldn't even be playing. They cannot pitch. They haven't been able to pitch for a long time, and they don't do anything about it. Like, Ohtani failed this year as a pitcher. All right, but even if he did good, it's one guy. Like, go out and get some pitching for God's sakes. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a bad move to get Rendon, especially in a. I mean, I don't remember exactly what we talked about when this happened, but like, I'm pretty sure what I said was like, it's not a bad move getting Rendon in a league without a salary cap, but you need pitching. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need another third. You don't need another 3 hitter. You need pitching. Why don't you go out and get Keuchel or Cole? I mean, granted, I think the Yankees kind of had him locked up, but like, go get pitching, not Anthony Rendon. Like, I don't know. And this team, you've had Houston and Oakland with so much success, and you're just doing nothing, giving them wins all the time. It's just, and you're LA for goodness sakes. Plus, your crosstown rival has been the best team in baseball in the regular season like 8 years in a row. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's time for change. You got maybe the best player ever, and you can't even go 500.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
this guy should have
embarrassing.
been gone a long time ago.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% everything that you said there. The Angels are just a team that constantly underperforms every single year. They need to go out and listen. I am all for the Moneyball tactic, the spend not a lot of money and win. But there comes a time, and it kind of started this offseason with Rendon, where every once in a while you gotta spend some money. And the Moneyball tactic is only gonna work for so long,
Yeah.
and it really has never worked for the Angels. Now, granted, they typically had been in the past fairly aggressive when it came to free agency. Obviously, bringing in Albert Pujols, they brought in Josh Hamilton for that period that he was there. Anthony Rendon, obviously. So they have spent money, but I feel that because most of the time it hasn't panned out for them, that maybe they're afraid to do it again. Now, I think they're maybe going in the right direction. Their head's in the right place when they're getting Anthony Rendon. Maybe this offseason, I don't know the free agent market on the top of my head, but maybe this offseason they spend some money on some pitching because God knows they need it. So we'll have to see what happens. Whoever the GM is has a lot of work to do, and Artie Moreno should be saying, "I will give you all my money, just get me to the freaking playoffs."
Like, at least relief pitching. Like, you can win without starting pitching. It's pretty
Yeah.
hard.
Look at the Tampa Bay Rays.
Well, like the Royals didn't have the greatest starting pitching when they made back-to-back World Series.
Yeah.
But they had really good. They had, I mean, granted they just had timely hitting. It seemed like all those guys were clutch, but they had deep lineup. Nobody was great, but a deep lineup. They played defense, and they had, if they did get the lead, they didn't give it up because they had relievers. I mean, relievers are good one year and bad the next, or as in like starting, like you can get, what am I trying to say here? Like relievers come and go. Like you can always find relievers in free agency essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like just sign a bunch. You can sign like 7 relievers and 2 or 3 of them will pan out. It's just the way it goes. So just sign relievers. Just sign them all. Sign all of them for gosh sakes. Just get some relief pitching. It doesn't cost that much. You need something. Quit spending all your money on outfielders that can't play defense and Albert Pujols who can't run to first base. Like, just go get some pitching for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
Help Mike Trout out.
Yeah. Mission should be get Mike Trout to the playoffs, and I think if you're the Angels, you do anything that you can to get him there. Trades, free agency, whatever. Yeah, and you got bounced. Yeah, you didn't do anything.
They were the 1 seed. They were the 1 seed that year, but they got swept.
Yeah. But anyways, we'll have to see what happens with the Angels. Certainly keep a close eye to that situation. So that's the end of the show. That's all we have to talk about. Unless, Nick, is there anything you wanted to bring up?
Shout out to them Lakers, baby.
Yeah. LA Lakers, titles, 17th time LeBron James gets his 4th ring, 4th finals MVP. W's. But congratulations to them for sure. MLB playoffs right now, a little update on that. Tampa Bay Rays, Houston Astros. Rays are up 3-1 in that series. And then the Atlanta Braves and LA Dodgers. Braves are up 2-1 in that series.
How about that 11-run first inning yesterday?
Dodgers weren't going down without a fight. That's for sure.
They clearly weren't going down 3-0.
So we'll have to watch that, see how those playoffs culminate here. But anyways, that's the end of our show. A fairly quick episode, but I got a lot to talk about. Like I mentioned, NHL, we didn't talk about it today, but I promise there will be an entire episode dedicated to NHL talk coming up shortly, so be on the lookout for that. But anyways, folks, if you want to follow our social media, follow us on Twitter, myself, at Luke_Dorton, capital L, capital D. If you want to follow Nick on Twitter, at Doetkott, Doetkott, whatever's easier for you to type in there. And then if you would like to follow our podcast Twitter page, it is at DND_podcast, capital D's, capital P for that. So certainly be sure to follow all of those. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Share this with all your friends, family. Word out. Definitely get those views up. We just certainly appreciate you watching and listening to this episode. If you would like to be on an episode, let us know. We can try and get something worked out. It's always cool to see fresh faces in here for sure. But anyways, that is all we have to talk about, folks. Thank you for listening to episode 36 of the Dorton and Doetkott Debate Podcast. And as for Nick and myself, until next time, we are out.